Section 25. VAIYIKRA TSAV. And the Lord spake with Moshe, saying, Instruct Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the law of the burnt offering which is brought to make atonement for the thoughts of the heart. It is a burnt offering, which is made in the manner of the burnt offering at Mount Sinai, and abideth upon the place of burning on the altar all the night until the morning. For the fire of the altar shall be burning in it. And the priest shall dress himself in vestments of linen, and put drawers of linen upon his flesh. Jerusalem. Drawers, and shall separate the ashes which the fire maketh in consuming the burnt offering upon the altar, and shall place them at the side of the altar. And he shall take off his vestments, and put on other garments, and carry forth the ashes without the camp into a clean place. But the fire upon the altar shall burn upon it unextinguished. And the priest shall lay wood upon it from morning to morning, at 4 hours of the day, and shall set in order the burnt offering upon it, and burn upon it the fat of the sanctified oblations. The fire shall be ever burning upon the altar, it shall never be extinguished. And this is the law of the mincha, which the priests, the sons of Aaron, shall offer in the presence of the Lord before the altar. And he shall separate his handful of the flour of the mincha, of the best thereof, with all the frankincense which is upon the mincha, and burn it at the altar to be received with favor, as a memorial of praise before the Lord. And that which remaineth of it shall Aaron and his sons eat, and leavened shall they eat it in the holy place, in the court of the tabernacle of ordinance shall they eat it. The portion of the residue of the mincha of my oblations given to them shall not be baked with leaven, it is most sacred, as the sin offering and as the trespass offering. Every man of the sons of Aaron may eat of it. This is an everlasting statute for your generations concerning the oblations of the Lord. Every one who toucheth them must be sanctified. And the Lord spake with Moshe, saying, This is the oblation of Aaron and of his sons, which they are to offer before the Lord on the day that they anoint him, that he may possess the inheritance of the high priesthood. 1/10 of 3 seahs of fine flour for a mincha, 1/2 in the morning and 1/2 at eventide. Thou shalt make it upon a pan, mixed with olive oil shalt thou offer it, in divided pieces shalt thou offer the mincha, to be received with acceptance before the Lord. Jerusalem. Fried shalt thou offer it, broken in pieces shalt thou offer the mincha, a sweet savor of acceptableness unto the name of the Lord. And the high priest who is anointed with oil, and also when any one of his sons who are constituted priests is consecrated in his place, shall perform this. It is an everlasting statute before the Lord. The whole shall be set in order and burned. For every mincha of the priest shall be wholly set in order and consumed. It shall not be eaten. And the Lord spake with Moshe, saying, Speak with Aaron and with his sons, saying, This is the law of the sin offering which is to be killed in the place where the burnt offering is killed. It shall be slain as a sin offering before the Lord. It is most sacred. The priest who maketh atonement with blood may eat of it in the holy place. It shall be eaten in the court of the tabernacle of ordinance. Whosoever toucheth the flesh of it must be sanctified. And if any one let some of its blood fall upon a garment, the garment so bedropped shall be washed in the holy place. And every earthen vessel in which the flesh of it is boiled shall be broken, lest that which is common be boiled in it, or if it be boiled in a vessel of brass, it shall be scoured with potter's earth and washed in waters. Every man of the priests may eat thereof, it is most sacred. But no sin offering whose blood is carried into the tabernacle of ordinance to make atonement in the sanctuary may be eaten, it must be burned with fire. 7. And this is the law of the trespass offering, it is most holy. In the place where they kill the burnt sacrifice, they shall kill the trespass offering, and the blood thereof shall he sprinkle upon the altar round about. And he shall offer all the fat thereof, and the tail, and the fat which covereth the inwards, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat which is upon them, and upon the inwards. And the caul that is upon the liver upon the kidneys shall he take away, and the priest shall burn them at the altar, an oblation before the Lord. It is a trespass offering. Every man of the priests may eat of it. In the holy place shall it be eaten, it is most sacred. As the rite of the sin offering, so is the rite of the trespass. There is one law for them. The priest who maketh atonement with its blood shall have it. And when the priest offereth another man's burnt sacrifice, the skin of the burnt sacrifice which he offereth shall be the priest's. And every minka which is baked in the oven, and every one that is made in a pot, or in a frying pan, or upon a dish, the priest who offereth it shall have it for his own. And every minka mixed with oil, or which is dry, shall be for any of the sons of Aaron, a man as his brother. And this is the law of the sanctified victims which they may offer before the Lord. If he offer it for a thanksgiving, let him offer with the oblation of thanks unleavened cakes mingled with olive oil, and unleavened wafers anointed with olive oil, and flour fried with a mixture of olive oil. Jerusalem. 1 rule. Upon the cakes he shall offer his oblation of leavened bread with the hallowed sacrifice of thanksgiving. And of it he shall present one as a separation before the Lord. The priest who sprinkleth the blood of the hallowed sacrifice shall have it. And the flesh of his hallowed sacrifice of thanksgiving shall be eaten on the day when it is offered. None of it may be laid up or covered up until the morning. But if his hallowed sacrifice be a vow or a freewill gift, the sacrifice may be partly eaten on the day when it is offered, and the remainder may be eaten on the day following at evening. And what remaineth of the flesh of the hallowed sacrifice on the third day shall be burned in fire. If, eating, he will eat of the flesh of his hallowed sacrifice on the third day, it shall not be accepted of him who offered it, nor reckoned to him for righteousness. It will be a profane thing. Jerusalem. It will be a profane thing, and the man who eateth of it shall bear his sin. And if the flesh of things hallowed touch any uncleanness, it must not be eaten, but be burned in fire. But as to flesh that is consecrated, every one who is clean by sanctification may eat the hallowed flesh. But the man who eateth of the flesh of the hallowed sacrifice that is offered before the Lord with his uncleanness upon him, that man shall be destroyed from among his people. The man also who toucheth any unclean thing, whether the uncleanness of man, or of unclean beasts, or any unclean reptile, and eateth of the flesh of the hallowed sacrifices offered before the Lord, that man shall be cut off from his people. And the Lord spake with Moshe, saying, Speak with the sons of Israel, saying, You may not eat any fat of oxen, or sheep, or goats, but the fat of an animal which corrupteth in the hour of sacrifice, or which dieth a dead thing by death. Or the fat of a beast that is torn may be used in any work, but the fat of an animal that is in a right condition shall be burned upon the altar, and shall in no wise be eaten. For he who eateth the fat of an animal that is fit to be offered as an oblation before the Lord, that man who eateth the fat shall be cut off from his people. In none of your dwellings shall you eat the blood, whether of bird or of beast. Every man who eateth the blood of any living thing, that man shall be cut off from his people. And the Lord spake with Moshe, saying, Speak with the sons of Aaron, saying, Whosoever presenteth his hallowed sacrifice before the Lord shall himself bring the oblation of his hallowed sacrifice unto the presence of the Lord. His hands shall bring the oblations of the Lord which he would set apart as his hallowed sacrifice. The fatness that is upon the breast, and the breast cut out with 2 ribs here and 2 ribs there at the top, shall be bring to be uplifted, an elevation before the Lord. Jerusalem. His own hands shall bring in the oblation of the Lord. The fat which is upon the breast he shall give it. And the breast, a wave offering before the Lord, and the priest shall burn the fat upon the altar, and the breast shall be for Aaron and for his sons. Jerusalem. The breast, and the right shoulder of your hallowed sacrifice from the side unto the extremity, arm, you shall give as a separation unto the priest. He of the sons of Aaron who offered the blood and the fat of the hallowed sacrifice shall have the right shoulder as his portion. For the uplifted breast and the shoulder of separation have I taken of your hallowed sacrifice, and given them to Aaron the priest and to his sons by an everlasting statute, for the children of Israel. This pertaineth to the consecration of Aaron, to the consecration of his sons over all the Levites the brethren, that they may eat of the Lord's oblations in the day that they present them to minister before the Lord, which the Lord commanded to be given them in the day of the consecration from among the sons of Israel, by an everlasting statute to your generations. This is the law of the burnt offering which is brought to atone for the thoughts of the heart, of the mincha, of the sin offering, of the trespass offering, and of the peace offering, or the hallowed sacrifices which the Lord commanded Moshe in Mount Sinai, in the day that he commanded the sons of Israel to offer their oblations before the Lord in the tabernacle that he made unto him in the wilderness of Sinai. 8. And the Lord spake with Moshe, saying, Bring near Aaron who is afar off on account of the work of the calf, and take the vestments that I commanded thee, and the oil of consecration, and the bullock, and the 2 rams, with the basket of unleavened cakes. And let all the congregation gather together at the gate of the tabernacle of ordinance. And Moshe did as the Lord commanded, and the congregation assembled on the 23rd of the days of the month of Adar at the gate of the tabernacle of ordinance. And Moshe said to the congregation, This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded to be done. And Moshe took Aaron and his sons, and washed them with water. And he set in order upon him the vestment, and girded him with the girdle, and clothed him with the mantle robe, and put upon him the ephod, and bound him with the band of the ephod, and ordained him therewith. And he set the breastplate upon him, and ordered in the breastplate the Uriah and the Tumriah. And he put the mitre upon his head, and set upon the mitre over his forehead a plate of gold, the diadem of holiness, as the Lord commanded Moshe. And Moshe took the oil of consecration, and anointed the tabernacle, and sanctified it. And he sprinkled upon the altar 7 times, and sanctified the altar and all its vessels, and the laver and its foundation to sanctify them. And he poured of the oil of consecration upon Aaron's head, and anointed him after he had invested him, to sanctify him. And Moshe brought near Aaron and his sons, and clothed them with vestments, and girded them with girdles, and decked them with mitres, as the Lord commanded Moshe. And he brought the bullock for the sin offering, and Aaron and his sons laid the right hands upon the head of the bullock for the sin offering. And Moshe killed the bullock. And Moshe took the blood and put it upon the horns of the altar round about with his finger, and anointed the altar, to expiate it from all double-mindedness, constraint, and force, from the thoughts of his heart. Should any one of the princes of the sons of Israel have taken his separation from his brethren by violence, and brought it for the work of the tabernacle, 1. Or lest any one was found among the children of Israel who had it not in his heart to bring for the work, but heard the voice of the crier, and was constrained, and brought without willingness, therefore cleansed he it with the blood of the bullock, and poured the rest of the blood at the foot of the altar, and sanctified it to make atonement thereon. And he took all the fat that was on the inwards, and the caul of the liver, and the 2 kidneys with the fat, and Moshe burned them at the altar. But the bullock, and the skin, and his flesh, and his offal, he burned in fire without the camp, as the Lord commanded Moshe. And he took the ram for the burnt offering, and Aaron and his sons laid the right hand upon the head of the ram. And he killed the ram, and Moshe sprinkled the blood upon the altar round about. And he divided the ram after its parts, and Moshe burned the head and the parts and the fat. And the inwards and the feet he washed with water, and Moshe burned the ram at the altar, a burnt sacrifice to be received with acceptance, an oblation before the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moshe. And he brought the second ram, the ram of completion which completed all, and Aaron and his sons laid the hand upon the head of the ram. And he killed the ram, and Moshe took of its blood, and put it upon the extremity of Aaron's ear, the middle cartilage of the right ear, and upon the middle joint too of his right foot. And he brought the sons of Aaron. And Moshe put of the blood upon the middle cartilage of the right ears, and upon the middle joint of the right feet, and Moshe poured out all the remaining blood upon the altar round about. And he took the fat, and the tail, and all the fat which was upon the inwards, and the caul of the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat, and the right shoulder, and from the basket of unleavened cakes which was before the Lord he took 1 unleavened cake of bread mixed with oil, and 1 wafer, and put it upon the fat and upon the right shoulder, and laid the whole in order upon Aaron's hands and upon the bands of his sons, and belifted them up, an elevation before the Lord. And Moshe took them from off their hands, and burned them upon the altar with the burnt sacrifice, a completing offering were they to complete all, to be received with acceptance before the Lord. And he took the breast, and uplifted it, an elevation before the Lord, of the oblation ram that was the separated portion of Moshe, as the Lord commanded Moshe. And Moshe took the consecrating oil, and of the blood which was upon the altar, and sprinkled upon Aaron, and upon his vestments, and on his sons, and on the vestments with him, and sanctified Aaron and his vestments, and his sons and the vestments with him. And Moshe said to Aaron and to his sons, Boil the flesh of the oblations in pots at the door of the tabernacle of ordinance. And there shall you eat it with the bread which is in the basket of oblation, according to the precept which was spoken. Aaron and his sons shall eat it. And what remaineth of the flesh and of the bread you shall burn with fire. And from the door of the tabernacle you shall not go forth 7 days, until the day that your consecration be completed, because in 7 days is the tabernacle set up and taken in pieces, and your oblation be offered. So did he, and ordained the order of the oblations on the day. Likewise the Lord hath commanded to be done by you after the days of consecration, to make atonement for you. And at the door of the tabernacle of ordinance you shall reside day and night 7 days, and watch the vigils of the word of the Lord, that you may not die, for thus it hath been commanded. And Aaron and his sons did all the things which the Lord had commanded by the hand of Moshe.